Hi, PJ Scott here with Veterans Forum, and I have a very special guest that some of you, if you've been watching me for the last 9 years, has seen before on the Veterans Forum studio, is Navy Captain retired Larry Seaquist, who is a state representative in the great city of Olympia. Welcome, Captain Larry.
Thank you.
Now, recently, this will be aired later, but we want to get into talking about strategies for peace, particularly on the heels of Osama bin Laden's death. But before we get there, we want to talk about veterans and higher education, because you're all involved in that.
Right.
So tell us, what's a new policy change? I can hardly keep up with the GI Bill. In fact, you hear me say frequently, well, that's what I knew was true. It might not be true now. Right. You better look it up, because it seems like these benefits change and are tweaked and so forth. So here today in 2011, what's the deal on the GI Bill?
There's a new GI Bill, thanks to the country responding to all of the troops that were in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that need to continue, as we did back after World War II,
right,
of really helping the whole country become more educated by letting vets become more educated. So there's a new GI Bill, and it will give you essentially a full ride at a university or a community college or a number of other lines of study. And it even has some transfer features for a spouse. So it's attractive to the universities and the colleges because it's a student with money. And it's something that I think all of our vets, even older vets who are thinking about going back, if they qualify, of going back. And if they don't qualify for the new GI Bill, there are other ways to go in and get old GI benefits or just other support.
Okay, now I went in the Navy in '71 because of the GI Bill. I was a patriotic young woman, but I wanted that college education. And I did get a BA degree. So out there, I'm sure I'm not the only one, we're sitting here thinking, oh gee, could we go back?
Yes.
Wow.
And the thing to remember is that the more you have, if a 4-year degree, right now, people with 4-year degrees have an unemployment rate of only about 5%. They make a lot more money and they have a lot lower risk of being unemployed. So you can map directly how much education you have and how unlikely it is you're going to be laid off. Doesn't save everybody, but it really is economically important. Or even later in life, if you're an older vet, get back to school, do an interesting course, just to enjoy life and see what else there is to know.
I wasn't expecting you to say this. I'm starting to think, my brain's going chink, chink, chink. What do I want to do now and start maybe a second career or
We've
something?
got here in Washington State, we have 34 community and technical colleges, 6 universities, all in the public system, plus a lot of private schools. There are educational opportunities on every corner.
Well, and the GI Bill isn't just for vets living in Washington State, so this is all over.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really wonderful news. I had no idea.
And the new vet, the younger vet with this new GI Bill is a very attractive student because they bring money.
Now, I would hope, because at some point, I can remember someone complaining that when they joined the military, they didn't get the GI Bill. So
Correct.
Those folks, what was that, during the Reagan years, I believe?
Yeah, there was a long gap there where the GI Bill got shut down and it took a year. It took just recently.
Would those folks qualify?
No, I've forgotten exactly what the start date is, PJ, but it's back in the last few years after we got into Iraq and Afghanistan.
Now, what web page might they jump to? Because I'm sure this is I can hear the audience right now. I want to check this out. Where do they go?
Veterans Department, go to the VA, or simply Google. The best place to go is go to your local community college, local university, look up the advisors, and they will lay out this menu they will help you find out what you're eligible for and what other programs they may have to help you get through school.
Okay, you heard it here. If you're a veteran, check that out. I am just floored that possibly if you already have a BA degree and you're not working that, or if you're as old as I am, I'm Vietnam era, maybe that job really doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
The evolutions of work has changed so much. This might be a good brush up for some people.
And that's what the vet brings to the local community. We always talk about vets with problems that need help, and there are lots. But most vets are returning to their community full of energy, mature, responsible leaders. They've been out in the world. They can take charge of things, and they are really dynamite citizen leaders. And that plus those military qualities, plus a little bit of education, means you're going to help lead that community.
Well, anyone who's in the military, most of them have some leadership qualities, and they certainly know about teamwork. So that's a dynamic duo, and education to stay employed.
Now, can I talk about politics?
Yes, please do.
For those vets who have a mind to do that, you can not only think about going to college, think about getting into politics, like I did. We, professional military, I was in the Navy for 32 years. I enlisted in 62, got a commission a little bit later once I got my degree, and ended up enjoying a 32-year Navy career. We professional military pride ourselves that even though we've got political opinions and we vote, that we stay out of retail politics.
Yes.
But once you're out of the military, once you're a vet, a retiree, it's open season.
Yeah, you can shoot your mouth off.
It is so interesting to get involved in politics, to work on a campaign, run for office yourself, run for school board, run for the sewer district, run for city council, run for the state legislature, and all the action is local. The interesting things about sewers and schools and roads, healthcare is all local. It's at the state and local level.
That's right.
So that's where the fun in politics are.
Right, and I would encourage you to do that because we have, when I was growing up, Larry, there was a bunch of World War II vets that were everywhere and kind of hooking with the GI Bill. The GI Bill for World War II vets changed the economic landscape profoundly.
Correct.
These people were educated. It wasn't the super rich educated and the farmer anymore and the occasional guy in manufacturing. I mean, it really changed our nation for the better.
And PJ, what I worry about now is that those 50s and 60s, those vets and their kids became rapidly more educated thanks to the GI Bill and their energy. Now, the sad fact, I chair the Higher Education Committee in Washington State for the legislature, the House of Representatives. Our young generation is less educated than their parents.
I would
it's
tend to agree
going
with
the
you.
wrong way.
Yes.
That's why I'm so interested in seeing vets get back into school, get those credentials, and start leading our community. We need to be more educated.
And remember, when you're taking those classes, the government pays you, so shame on you if you don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you really don't have any excuse. Look it up. If you don't know where to go, you're living somewhere, call that junior college or that university. There's got to be a vet rep there. Just ask to talk to the
Here in
guy at the
Washington
veterans
State,
office.
we've got vet reps at almost every campus, including recent Iraq or Afghanistan vets. We've even got a Veterans Conservation Corps. We've got a lot of those kinds of things, so special programs for vets.
Good, good. Now, as I said earlier, this isn't network TV, this is local community TV, so I tape a month or two before the program actually gets on the air. Osama bin Laden, thank God, is dead, finally. You had talked to me on a previous TV show about being involved in Department of Defense and strategies for peace. That sounded fascinating to me, but we ran out of time. So I don't want to run out of time this time.
Okay.
So tell us about strategies for peace and how the U.S. government military has evolved into peacekeeping.
Okay. I was a sailor, so like most sailors, my life was either at sea or ashore. At sea, I was fortunate enough to command a series of ships leading up to the battleship Iowa that I had the privilege of commanding. And when I was ashore, I worked in the Pentagon, working my way up as a strategist, a political military strategy guy, budgets, and what were we going to do and how much did we spend doing it. And near the end of the Cold War, as I was in the Pentagon, I was working for the man that later became our vice president, Dick Cheney.
Okay.
He was the Secretary of Defense in, right at the end of the Cold War.
Right.
And as with no longer having a Soviet Union, that no longer having that big war strategy, we were trying to figure out what do we do now. And we found that we were involved in things like in the Balkans, in these little local peacekeeping operations. Now, the background is that the American military, going back to the Revolution, is essentially a citizen army that wants peace, wants to get the war over. We want to be as deadly as we possibly can, get it over with, and get back on.
Yeah, hurry up and get it over with and go
Democracies
back
are
home.
built around peace.
Yes.
So the question was, when we were no longer creating peace by destroying the Soviet Union, by destroying an enemy, what was peace and how did we get there? Now, I'd been doing a lot of military wargaming, and so what I did is turn the wargaming upside down, call it peace gaming, and I started gaming simulations of these things like the Balkans, terrorist things in the Middle East. And then when I retired, I went not to work for, but I was under contract to the United Nations, the UNESCO organization in Paris.
Oh, okay.
And I traveled around the world trying to figure out what was peace and how did we get there. If you were in a country like, I worked in Colombia, civil war in Sri Lanka, worked a lot in the Middle East, in Israel with the Palestinians, the Jordanians, worked in Central Asia. And so what we were doing is simulating all of the local players to figure out how could we facilitate them either getting out of the war or not getting into it in the first place.
Now, this is going to sound very simplistic, and I want you to elaborate. War, to me, is more complicated than simply the haves and the have-nots. You might start there, but it very quickly gets more complicated than that.
And peace is a lot more complicated than war. Peace is a lot of different players. In Colombia, for example, in the Civil War, where it looks like in the newspaper, it's the government versus the rebels in the jungle. Actually, when we simulated it, we figured out that there were about 11 different kinds of Colombian power centers all working against each other. And in the middle is where the fighting was going on. So unraveling the local motivations, the local actors, so that it's more complicated than black versus white. Now, our young vets who are coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, will tell you they know about that.
Right.
Because they're working in villages, the little hamlets where it's hard to tell who's on which side, what the local leaders really want. They'll understand.
Well, and every country, it's just not America, is filled with individuals with his own desires and needs
Correct.
and wants.
Right.
So you can't, we're not all the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us, how do we get there?
Well, I think, first of all, let's start with what we Americans have to offer. We have to offer more than 200 years of experience of a real democracy. We know about voting. We know about having police that are, in general, honest, trustworthy. We know about institutions that are supposed to work. So that when we go in and talk to somebody about democracy, we really do talk about it's possible. It's not just a theory.
Well, as a matter of fact, in recent months, with so much of the Middle East, there's been protests. They want maybe not the American form of democracy, but the general population
Sure.
wants more say about their
Absolutely.
own destiny.
That's human.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I applaud
And they
that.
were looking and says, we want to be like them. It's not that we want to be Americans, but
Right.
we want that same freedom, ability to speak our mind,
Yes.
ability to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
And particularly being female, not being held back because of your gender.
And I'll tell you, PJ, that's one of the things that was a real lesson for me is traveling from country to country where they were at war or at the risk of being at war. The thing that you noticed first is the education system and whether it was educating girls. I can fly into a country and tell you almost everything you need to know by finding out, are they educating their girls? And if they are not, you've got a country in deep trouble.
Well, yes, you do. And for those of you that, let's be frank, a woman is the heart of the home. And if she's not educated, has no options, what spark of hope can she put in her children? It's not there. It's not there.
And I'm sure we'll have lots of vets watching the younger vets who have been in villages in Iraq or Afghanistan, thinking about rebuilding schools, working with local elders to get that
Well,
back.
it's good for the men too. That's why I've never understand these cultures. I mean, it's good for the men as well. It enriches a man's life. It doesn't take anything away from his manhood if his wife's educated.
And see, to bring back that to vets, to me, that's very military. Now, the American military is essentially peacekeepers, peace builders. Yeah, we're very good at weaponry, but in our hearts as Americans is the citizen soldier, peacekeeper, peace builder. Let's all work together. Let's make a democracy work so we don't have to shoot each other.
Right, it's about defense, not being aggressive.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us some of the examples, because you've been to several different countries. I was blown away. You have really been all over the world where some of these tactics were used. Oh, you're talking about a think tank, I believe, between...
Right. Just a couple of years ago, in the last couple of years, I've been nearly full-time in our legislature, but I'm still on email with some friends in Jerusalem. I flew to Jerusalem a couple of summers ago and spent some time with a group of young Palestinian professionals. They were in their 20s, early 30s, that had started businesses or they were in their careers. And they were working with a set of young Israelis. They had found each other, these two groups. And I came in and we got them in a big hotel complex for a long weekend, 2.5 days. And we ran one of these simulations of the Israelis, the Palestinians, the neighbors, the international community, working through how could they solve the Israeli-Arab crisis. What they decided to do was to create a think tank that they could, we've got lots of American think tanks and they're from the political left to the political right and non-political. But in Israel, there really wasn't such an institution, and certainly the young generation didn't have a voice. It was all the old-timers, same old-timers running things. So the idea was that they could begin to be educated in what is peace. How did this work? How could we solve our own problems?
And maintain it.
And as a result of that, they are just recently, one of the young Israelis who finished his PhD, he's now incorporating this think tank, and I've still been communicating with him on email. I'm hopeful that out of this, at this new time with the Egyptians asking for democracy, Syria changing, everything's changing, that they can help rethink the heart of that Israeli-Palestinian problem.
I know this is really scary and for some people, but I choose to look hopeful that these people found the courage to stand up and have a voice. We do not like the way our country is being run. We're paying taxes, we're a citizen here, and why don't we have a say in how things are run?
Your veteran viewers could also think of themselves, so we were talking about themselves, vets as assets to a community.
Yes.
These vets are also assets to other countries. If they've been over there, they've thought about this, come back, got their degree.
Right.
There's no reason why our vets can't go out and join these international organizations, the local group that sends somebody to another country to work on schools. There are a lot of ways that you can keep on doing that peace-building work as a volunteer or even as a professional in the international
Well,
community.
actually, let's be frank. Those that have been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and other areas of the world, you've been there. So you have your
Right.
experience combined with education. How can you possibly fail?
And you know how to take care of yourself in the field. You know that you can get out there and get back the next day. You got a lot of skills that are very valuable.
Wonderful. Now, if a person is all this information in a book?
No. I keep thinking that I ought to write a book about that myself, but I haven't got there yet.
I think you do need to write a book, because I don't know of anybody on earth who say they don't want peace. The problem is a lot of times they don't want to make compromises because no two people are going to think exactly alike all the time.
And especially, I think more than my generation, which was an old Cold War, pure military generation, these youngsters, and many of these youngsters are in their 30s and 40s,
Right.
These young folks coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, these other missions, now are deeper inside this new world with a lot to offer. And I would love to see their creativity, now that they're out of uniform,
Right.
going back and of course, the same lessons that they may have learned in an Iraqi village are things they can use in the hometown when they're working on the city council, working with people to get the sewer working, whatever.
Yes. Well, I'd really would encourage that. Now, before we come to an end here, how are things going economically? Do you think we're going to get out of this hole anytime soon?
Only if you define any time soon as 10 years from now.
Oh, really?
What's happening, I think, as just one observer, you can see this real difference between the overall growth of our economy is extremely slow, like under 2% a year. That's not even enough to employ the new people. So we have extremely high unemployment. On the other hand, the corporations are reporting record profits.
Yes,
so we're
which is
getting this
disturbing.
division between most of us who don't make a lot of money and a few people that are making a lot of money. And back to education then. How do you get out of this group and into that group? It's education. What I worry about is over the next several years as we struggle out of this recession, that the vets, move themselves up the economic ladder, probably through more, if it's a certificate, a 2-year degree, redoing something, a couple classes.
Right.
Those are the kind of things that really pay off, so that they can get out of this trap that has really got our country in the grip, I think, for several years to go.
Okay, well, that's probably an honest answer, but I hope it's a little bit more speedy than that.
Let's hope so.
Well, particularly, surely we're going to get out of Afghanistan at some point.
A lot of Americans are ready to do that.
Yes, I'm definitely one of them. And now that Osama bin Laden is not part of the picture anymore, and we have all these folks in the Middle East kind of doing their own revolution, they need to develop their own sort of democratic, whatever that may look like, I don't know. I would hope the threats would be minimized. There's always going to be some threat. We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah, and we've got a world that's complicated enough with American interests that if our soldiers aren't in Iraq or Afghanistan, I think we're going to see the military get smaller. We're going to have more vets because we're going to shrink this down. We just can't afford the military as big as it is right now. But we're going to be involved other places, in peacetime patrols, presence, doing those kind of things we talked about, of helping the locals stay out of war or get out of the war they're in.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so. So as we close, is there anything you'd like to add?
I would encourage our vets to realize what great assets they are in our community. We need to watch out for the ones with the PTSD, the economic problems. Need to be very careful about vets' families,
Yes.
spouses and kids. I'll tell you, every single teacher that I know will tell you that she or he can pick the military kids out in the class because they get whiplash from the adult soldier, sailors, military service. But that said, we don't want to look at our vets as just problems that the community's taking.
No, not
Our
at all.
vets are, just like they were in the 50s, they are the answer to America's future.
Yes.
We need to be proud of them, we don't have enough of them, and we need to make sure that they're taking their leading role in our society, including in politics. So come on, join me, politics is fun.
Okay, well, I think with that, we'll come to a close. Now, if you're a vet, do not allow your disabilities to hold you down.
That's for sure.
I'm sitting here legally blind. I see like a periscope out of a submarine. My rating for blindness is 90%, but my mouth works and I can ask questions.
And your brain works, PJ.
Yeah, most of the time. I'll tell you, with this diabetes, sometimes I get these diabetic fog because my blood sugar goes too high. But I don't let it stop me. And I know some of you have much more catastrophic injuries than what I do, but you are of value and you need to be figuring out what your strengths are. And if I may say so, ask God to show you where you need to be. You might really be surprised.
Right.
Maybe you need to be sitting at a Capitol building making
Absolutely.
legislations with
Yeah.
the governor. Anyway, Captain Larry, thank you so much for
Thanks,
your
PJ.
service
My
and
pleasure.
continuing to serve even today. And you can do the same. God bless you. This is PJ. If you're a vet, thank you, thank you, thank you. See you next time.